More now on news that the United States may soon require tourists, including Australians, to disclose 5 years' worth of social media history in order to enter the country. The new changes would require travellers to provide information including their email addresses from the past 10 years and detailed information about immediate family members. Sherwin Nourian is a US immigration lawyer based in Australia. He says the rate of refusal for overseas travellers is likely to be higher.
Yes, anecdotally, we do believe that has increased, including for Australians to some degree. Probably not as much as we may have feared at the start of this year when the Trump administration came in. The dust has sort of settled. We don't have exact data, but anecdotally through what I do and speaking to people and travelers, we do think certainly the scrutiny is higher and the rate of refusal may be higher.
And so does it look like this latest initiative, this possibility, they're talking about it as a plan, would substantially increase what is checked when Australians go into the US?
It could. It's just more data that they can use for a potential sort of negative interaction at the border, so to speak. So if one would disclose their social media and that social media is then checked prior to the travel or at the border itself, and there's something of concern to them there, then that would follow that we would expect potentially increased refusals, yes.
And so if people have been critical of Donald Trump on social media over the years, should they be worried about turning up to the US after a long flight and being refused entry?
I wouldn't say if it's, I'd say if it's perhaps commentary posts, anti-Trump political posts, then for the average person doing that, it's probably not a concern. But if they are participating in a more organized, high-profile fashion, not just necessarily against Trump, but in certain causes that Trump doesn't like, unfortunately, I have to say that there is a risk if a person is sort of an activist in that space, something that they don't like, despite all their going on about free speech, they very well may choose to single someone out like that and refuse them entry.
Considering the sheer numbers of people going into the US, would it be possible, though, to check through every arriving passenger's social media history?
Correct. Not individually, Joe. It just would be too much work given the level of travel going in. However, the information would be available to them for them to use, for example, algorithmically through AI. That's a developing area. We know there's some work going on with Palantir and some big contracts there. So I think in the future that data will be used in a somewhat automated way to create flags and other sort of items for kind of manual inspection at the border.
And I'm not sure if you want to comment on this because it's a bit of a personal view, but how do you think this reflects on the US?
I think, well, it's important to note that this new sort of vetting that it will be happening with this data collection on the visa waiver program, or the ESTA as it's known, this is only for a limited number of nationalities, about 40, including Australia. So this is a sort of a privileged position. And what they're saying now is that we don't necessarily trust the people, all the people coming out of these 40 or so countries anymore. And we're actually going to start looking at them with a bit more hostility. So these are generally speaking allies of the United States. And what they're saying is, this is potentially a risk. These are potentially people who are a threat to U.S. public interests, and we need to look at them a lot more closely. So I think that is not a good sign, but we're seeing that elsewhere with them sort of going after Europe right now and the EU around sort of what they perceive as shortcomings with Europe and freedom of speech and so on. So it's just one more bit of sort of hostility towards the US's own allies.